Like many content creators, I'd cut together a lot of clips ready for the big Star Wars announcements at the Disney Plus event a few weeks ago, and well, this is all the news that we got, wasn't it? Yeah, I know, right? But I did have some content lined up for Disney Plus Day that obviously there's no point in putting it out because there's nothing to talk about. So I thought I'd go back and take a look at something that I'd already started, and that's Star Wars The Bad Batch Season 1. So as always, I'm Al, this is the Geek in Review, and this is What Are You Watching? And it's Star Wars The Bad Batch. What the hell am I going to do with all those Star Wars clips I've just got sitting on my laptop? I decided, let's make a video out of it instead of wasting all these clips or holding them in my hard drive for months, because we're going to get a lot more Star Wars movies and shows, and even more than that, we're probably going to get announcements before it, at least hopefully. And also, this video was requested by a subscriber to the page, and if you've got anything that you'd like me to discuss or look into, let me know in the comments below, or as always, you can follow me on Twitter at TheGeeksReviews. So, The Bad Batch Season 1, we know we're already getting a Season 2 despite the fact that we've not got any news on it yet, but was it any good? Well, I'm going to make a video on it anyway. When it comes to Star Wars animated content, it is going to be very hard to beat the Clone Wars, but the Clone Wars over and it lasted for many seasons, and we've all watched it and we've all got questions about that ending. So I didn't expect the Bad Batch to have that much of an impact on me in the first season. I liked the show, I didn't love it. It did have some pretty good elements, and it was more the in-depth stuff that I was interested in. They did open with a feature-length episode in which you see the other side of Order 66 and the fallout from that. So straight away you see the clones with a Jedi, and then Order 66 falls. We all know what happens to the Jedi, let's not go into it. But then you see what happens when these guys go back to their base. Now, the clones in the Bad Batch aren't the sort of normal clones. They don't have the inhibitor chips installed, or they do, but they're not active, I should say. They do have the inhibitor chips, but for some reason they're not switched on in the clones initially. And this sort of background Empire stuff, or the setup to the Empire, or what happened next after Revenge of the Sith, that was really good. I really enjoyed it in the first few opening episodes. We get to see the formation of the Empire and how it's handled, and the show does it really well. I thought they were going to lean into it a lot more than they did in the first few episodes, but they set it up really well. But I kind of did feel that it only came and went throughout the first season. I would have liked to have seen a lot more about what was going on with the building and the Empire and the logistics, because we do get a few familiar faces and, well, not really voices because it's another actor, pop up in the Clone Wars. And we find that although the Clone Wars have been successful and everyone's pretty happy with the clones, especially the Kaminoans or Kaminoans, I'm never sure how you say that. Let me know in the comments below. But the Empire isn't really set and going in the direction of clones. They sort of hinted at this in other films. I think it was in The Last Jedi or The Rise of Skywalker, where Hux mentions about recruiting throughout the galaxy and getting children, which is how Finn and Janna was recruited in the last Star Wars trilogy, is they were just plucked from wherever they were as children. And not everyone in the Empire is happy with using clones. They maybe don't think in the long run that's going to pay off for them, because the Empire might have to take on more complex enemies than just crap robots from the from the prequel films. I'm sure we're going to get more of the Empire and what's going on behind the scenes with those guys in Season 2, and maybe even more seasons. I can't really see this show stopping because it's Disney, it's Star Wars, it's animated, and it's Disney Plus, and there wasn't any real complaints from the sort of general public or division in the Star Wars fan base that you usually get with these types of things, which in itself is unusual. But I think that might be the problem with this show, is it maybe just is a little bit bland. But it does have all the Star Wars tropes of heroes, rogues, chases, escapes, all that stuff, and the music is absolutely fantastic, as it should be and it needs to be when you're in the Star Wars world. The themes are great and huge. The animation, I've got to be honest, I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was particularly amazing. Looking at something like recently Star Trek Prodigy, I think the animation in that was a lot more superior to this. And the animation in the old Clone Wars show, I don't mean the original Samurai Jack style, I mean the ones that came later on. The animation in that was really superior to this. Like, for example, one of the main characters, Omega, the way that her skin looked at certain angles or the way that the light hit it, it kind of looked artificial and almost wood at a certain bit. And speaking of Omega, I have to say, I don't really think the actress doing her voice fitted the role, or Omega, the look of Omega fitted that actress's voice, because she looks a little bit younger than she sounds, and that was a little bit off-putting. But she is a great character, and her connection to the Bad Batch when it's revealed does make sense and pay off. And that's one thing that this show does really well too, is it examines the clones and what it is to be a clone, especially the last few episodes when they have to destroy their home world. What impact is that going to have on them in the long run? I mean, when these inhibitor chips, if they ever do wear off, how are these guys going to feel about it? But it is a slow and a bit of a slog to get to this. Let's say the last few episodes really are the kind of payoff and set the direction for what's going to happen in season 2. But there's just too much filler, especially once it gets by episode 3. They don't really show us anything that we haven't really seen before, and the setup with the clones and or Omega, who is a clone I should say, the Bad Batch and Omega. Only a year after The Mandalorian, it felt like this was exactly the same as Din Djarin and Grogu, and I know I'm not the only one that thought that. And in terms of writing, it's a bit dangerous to play it this safe, as fans could become complacent. The whole point of Star Wars is it's this huge galaxy and universe, and we need to start seeing more of it rather than the same 50 characters recycled and respent again and again. That's just my opinion, and I can understand why they're bringing back all these Easter eggs, and I love the work that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni and all those guys are doing. And the new shows like Obi-Wan, I'm sure, are going to be phenomenal, as well as Boba Fett in the next season of The Mandalorian. But when it comes to animation, you can show us more. That's the entire point. You don't need to build a set or program a volume. You're going to design a world anyway, so you may as well make it something that we haven't seen. But I went off on a tangent there. Going back to what it means to be a clone and what it means to be a soldier, it does go deep, especially for a sort of kids cartoon, when it comes down to Hunter and Crosshair's point of view, because neither of them is entirely right and neither of them is entirely wrong on this one. What they've done with Crosshairs in the first few episodes, I don't know, I wasn't entirely happy with that either. I was hoping he would sort of come back into the fold or go off and do his own thing, but it just played out exactly as I'd kind of been expecting. And it does feel a little bit paint by numbers, and I don't mean that as a pun because it's animation, because we all know it's CGI, they don't paint anymore. The Bad Batch themselves are a pretty standard bunch. Hunter and Wrecker get the most to do, but the most interesting of all of the Batch is Crosshair. He's a complex character and he's got real depth. He's shown as a point of view that we don't really see before, as he's a pro-Empire character, and he's pretty sympathetic as well. And they do sort of explain why he does what he does and why he believes what he believes, and yeah, I thought that was really interesting. They could have went in any direction and took us anywhere and introduced a whole plethora of characters, and there are a few familiar faces that pop up on this. Spoiler alert, because I haven't mentioned them, but we get Fennec Shan, who is actually voiced by Ming-Na Wen, I can't say it, sorry, who appears in The Mandalorian and Boba Fett. We get Tarkin, and we get a few others, but I'm not going to ruin them. So if this show is going to keep playing it safe, I don't think it's going to attract any new fans. It really has to up the tempo. Star Wars fans tend to come down on a love or hate relationship to the film or the TV. Well, the TV shows are doing pretty well, but certainly the last 3 films have been pretty much love or hate. But with this show, it's hard to feel either way, as it's okay, but there's nothing here to hook anyone. There's no real huge twists or reveals or big developments that we haven't seen before. Also, one of the things that bothered me is they announced that they had a season 2 before the end of season 1, so any jeopardy that was left, you knew we were going to get an answer for it. And I hope we do get some meatier stories in season 2, because another issue that this had is it was a lot of side quest in the episode. Now, Mandalorian got a lot of criticism for this in the first few episodes of the last season, but this entire show just felt like it was just side quest after side quest, and there is room for real development of these characters, not only in the show but in the Star Wars universe itself. And I do think that we are going to see these characters